Another live stream, Square and Compass Promotions. Hope everybody is doing well. Don't forget August 21st. So basically 3 days, because today's August 18th. 24-hour content marathon is starting. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait for it. We're going to be celebrating the Masonic Medical Research Institute. So that's something I can't wait for. It's going to be a blast. I hope that you guys will check that out. Be there for that. In the meantime, we're just going to wait to see who joins. These 1 a.m. streams don't have any specific talking points, although I did see a letter from the Grandmaster of Indiana, which I do want to read out tomorrow. But I might read it out tonight as well, or today technically, the August 18th 1 a.m. stream. But I may read it out tonight as well. We'll just see who joins for the time being. And as always, please take a moment, hit like, hit subscribe. And let me know how you guys are doing. No rush. We're just going to wait to see who jumps on. I don't know if you guys saw the recent changes to YouTube. There's been a lot of change announcements on YouTube as of late. This one, views will now count from the moment a video is clicked upon or the first frame. They're going to have two different metrics for views, which is interesting. They're going to have engaged views, which is people who continue to watch regularly, and you know, otherwise just regular views, I guess, which is watching from the first frame, which is going to be interesting change. Orthodoxy, you need to calm down a bit with that stuff, Orthodoxy, because that sounds vaguely threatening. You need to relax a bit. Hungry and homeless, my name is Cameron. I am a Freemason. I started this channel to promote the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it's located, as well as turn my passion into profession, passion for Freemason into profession. Well, I mean, I suppose threatening isn't the right term. I suppose the better term would be paternalistic, right? Because I don't think you're praying for me to have a good life or to have, to find my way. I think you're praying for me to follow the same path you're following. So I guess that's more paternalistic is the right approach to take. You don't know better than me. Orthodoxy is cool. I don't mind when people pray for me if they're simply praying for me to find my way or to live a good life, but I don't think you're doing that. I think you are praying for me to follow your path. Nope. Uh, Epstein was not a Freemason. There's no evidence that he was, nor was Maxwell. Also, Freemasonry is not a cult. So you're wrong across the board. Orthodoxy, the problem is I think you've defined truth, and I think the truth that you want me to find is what you think is the truth. Doesn't mean that is what I think is the truth. I think you're praying for me to agree with you. And that's not fair. That's not how it works, right? It's like, for me, I always say on this stream, if people want me to, if people find this stream and then decide they want to join Freemasonry, that's great. If they decide they don't want to join Freemasonry, that's great too. It's completely up to them. There is no right answer that I can give to them. And Orthodoxy, yeah, I think you're praying that I agree with you, which is not, I think, an appropriate thing to pray for. He's not insane. He's just young, hungry and homeless. Um, Maybe, but we don't have to agree on what it is, and you might not be right. Now, you could be right. My point is, I have Christian Freemasons and Jewish and Muslim. There's all different Freemasons of all different beliefs, and they're all welcome to those beliefs. And in fact, I'm grateful that they have them. And it may turn out when we end up in the next life, it could very well be that the Christian Freemasons are correct, or the Muslim Freemasons, or who knows what the correct answer will be. But I would never tell anybody what the correct answer is, nor would I expect them to find or agree with me. One of the most beautiful things about maybe the stream or Freemasonry, in some ways, they're different things, but what I try to carry over from both is respect for the right for people to make up their own minds. Hungry, that's not how it works. Freemasonry is not running any type of shelters. Having said that, usually in your area, in your neck of the woods, Hungary, there are different shelters you can approach and talk to. I don't know where you are. If you let me know, maybe I can help you find a shelter. That might be the best bet I can do for you. Um, so I think I've heard of that show, The Secrets of the Skinwalker Ranch. I think I've heard of it, but I can't speak to it. I don't believe aliens myself. At least I don't believe aliens exist. So, like have visited Earth. They may exist outside of Earth, but I don't think they've visited us. Please take a moment, hit like, hit subscribe. Hello, Brick Flair. Hello, Modern Welfare. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget, I will be, and I'm very excited about this. I will be streaming the 24-hour stream very soon. Um, August 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's going to start August 21st, 2 p.m. It's going to go to August 22nd, 2 p.m. There will be some breaks here and there, but we're still going to be celebrating. It's going to be wonderful and promoting and discussing the Masonic Medical Research Institute, among many other things. So I look forward to it. Duck Sauce, yo, Wire Ghost, thank you for that. Um, well, Bubkiss is trying to spell out forehead. I'm gonna put him in a bit of a timeout because he's kind of spamming the chat a little bit. We got to calm him down a little bit. Thank you, Modern Welfare. It's gonna be a blast. I can't wait. Um, I mean, everything tastes good fried and seasoned, to be fair, Robert. But yes. So don't forget, on the 21st, 22nd, during that period, any revenues made during the stream will go to or 50%, excuse me, of the revenues from that stream will go to the Masonic Medical Research Institute, which will be a blast. I'm looking forward to that. That could be anything from super chats to ad revenue to gifts, as well as income made through social media, particularly through Facebook. Septimus, right now my stats are about 85 male, 15 female, 85% male, 15% female. I don't quite know because unfortunately, I mean, I don't even think it's unfortunate. It just kind of is what it is. It's one of those things where YouTube, the venue, very often is more popular with men than women. So the general audience from which I'm drawing is already tilted heavily towards the male side. But I do want to work on that because one of the greatest misconceptions, I think, is that Freemasonry is exclusively for men, and it's not. It's going to be a blast. Oh, that is awesome, Modern Welfare. That's really, really cool. That is true. No racism is welcome here. Like I said, you don't have to. Good on you, Mayo Norias, for not hiding him. We'll give him a second to see if he calms down. If he keeps up the nonsense, though, then we will hide him. You may think you've learned disturbing things about Freemasonry, but you could have learned something disturbing about not Freemasonry, about clandestine lodges or fake lodges, or you might just not know what you're talking about. You need to keep those things in mind as well. My suspicion, Orthodoxy, though, is whatever you're learning is just is supporting what you already believed. So if you already had suspicions about Freemasonry, of course, things online that talk nonsense about it is going to be more popular with you because it reaffirms your pre-existing beliefs. Nice. I assume by that one you mean, I assume by watching this you're referring to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. That is really cool. Well, I mean, that's probably because your YouTube channel is now, thanks to me, your YouTube algorithm is now going to send you stuff about Freemasonry. In terms of the symbols that we have, they're called signs. I'm not going to go into the specifics of them because it's not my place. You got to join to find out. However, what I will say I don't know if you historically, um, as a child, ever said things like "cross your heart, hope to die, stick a needle in your eye," for example. Very often, we as humans use uh, the metaphor of physical harm to express the seriousness of which the things we say. An example I've often used is I've used this before. I was a lawyer, not a lawyer, excuse me. I was a law student. I never actually practiced law, but I was a law student. I worked in a legal, but not putting a needle in your eye. I worked in a legal aid clinic, and I was talking to this one woman who was being evicted, and the landlord was saying she didn't pay her rent. She was saying that she did pay her rent. But at one point she said, if I'm lying, I'll rip out my tongue and, God can strike me dead. She didn't mean it literally. First of all, I don't think you literally can rip your tongue out. I think that's actually physically impossible. And she also did not expect, God to send a lightning bolt down and strike her dead. She was saying it was really important that what she was saying be believed or is believed. And so, she was using kind of the metaphor of physical harm to express the seriousness of the things she was saying. And, in that sense, if Freemasonry involves descriptions of physical harm, it's metaphorical, not literal, not practiced, and is meant to reaffirm the importance of the things being said. Um, No Freemasons stomp on papal tiaras. I'm not a 33rd. The rumor is that's where it happens. I know 33rd Masons. They never stomped on any papal tiaras. Um, Although, keep in mind, even if they did in Scottish Rite, who cares? Scottish Rite is, that'd be like saying if, I don't know, the Protestant church is found doing something not cool, it means all of Christianity is not cool. It's a sect of Freemasonry, it doesn't affect all of Freemasonry. Having said that, they don't do it, so. Um, I mean, I can't speak to recently because I don't know, but in my experience, I mean, I think it was Albert Pike who claimed that, if I recall it correctly, but I'm not positive. Um, all right, hungry and homeless, you're gonna have to calm down for a second. And Natasha is correct. Hello, Natasha. Um, you're not wrong, Natasha. Yes, very often it is the case that churches, food banks offer free meals. In fact, many Masons and Masonic lodges volunteer at food banks and churches that offer meals. I have not biggest seen the Odyssey as of yet, which is very unfortunate because I really want to. More than that, though, I want to see Tony, the new movie about Anthony Bourdain. I'm currently reading Kitchen Confidential. I think that that book probably has a lot of application to Freemasonry, and so I really want to read it. Or I'm finished reading it and then write about it. I quote Anthony Bourdain in a lot of my Medium stories, so. Um, so we got one person who didn't like the Odyssey. I mean, I think overall it seems fairly popular, but I think there are some people who don't like it, which is perfectly fine. Hello, Samantha Watkins. I think you've been here before, but if not, please hit like and subscribe. Natasha, same thing. And mark your calendars, August 21st, starting 2 p.m. Masonic Medical Research Institute. We're going to start talking about a very valuable part of the Masonic family, as well as a very valuable part of the medical research family. Um, yes, Mayo is correct. That'll get you timed out if you start arguing with somebody in the chat. I appreciate that, but keep in mind I'm not American, I'm Canadian. Um, Born and raised in Winnipeg, currently live in Windsor. Um, yeah, just let people be. I don't mind if people argue with me and call me stupid, but if you start talking to other people in the chat, that'll get you timed out pretty quick. Um, because it just detracts from the chat and it kind of complicates the chat, right? Suddenly you have people more focused on trying to get a point in against some enemy in the chat versus trying to listen to what I'm saying or what the guest is saying or whatever it might be. Um, Big, I mean, that's a political statement. Keep in mind, Freemasonry is not a political entity. So there are Republican Freemasons and Christian Freemasons, sorry, Democratic Freemasons and Republican Freemasons and everywhere in between. I can give you my personal opinion, which it doesn't surprise me at all because I've always thought Donald Trump is not a good dude. So I'm not a big fan. Never seen Rocor in Louisiana. Not sure what that is. Mayo, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I think he's a pretty terrible person. But we're going to make it through this. So Natasha says I'm an atheist. Like, it's fine to be on this channel. Of course, you're more than welcome. In a Masonic lodge, you have to believe in a supreme being, but the term supreme being is usually pretty broadly defined. I think Canada and America are a little bit more different than that, but um, yes, I got a big nose and a big forehead. Peak AB23. Please hit like and subscribe. Um, Orthodoxy. I know many Masons volunteer at many different churches. So, in fact, just last week, I was volunteering at a I was volunteering at a parish at a church in Chicago, creating packages of food and packages of like hampers of food and toiletries for people who are homeless or on low income. There was many other Masons there as well. And for example, the Morton Grove Brethren collected a whole bunch of food and toiletries and donated them to Northfield Pantry. Um, I agree. Um, no, he's not Orthodoxy. Now you need to calm down, or you're going to find yourself in a timeout. He's not attacking the Orthodox Church. Um, well, I was at the church, so I don't know what to tell you. Um, and I think the church probably doesn't care about whether you're a Mason or anything else. What they care about in that moment is volunteerism to help support the cause. Like I was at a church in here in Windsor actually. I have a couple of friends who I was wheeling by this church and a couple of my friends who were kind of struggling a bit, but they waved me over. They invited me in. The church was having a community dinner and they invited me to attend. So I attended the community dinner, and there was, I assume, Muslim people there helping to volunteer and serve the dinner. They had there were women, they had their hijab on, I believe it's called. I think most churches are smart enough to recognize that when it comes to desiring to be of service to your fellow man in your community, it doesn't matter what your civic engagement is or what your faith is. What matters is, are you going to be a good person, a good volunteer? Hijab, there you go. Thank you, Barry's Money. Everybody keeps saying I look ugly, so I appreciate you saying I look handsome. Um, as always, I hope everybody's doing well. Please take a moment, hit like and subscribe. Um, we got Mr. Peaceful as well. Square time. Well, thank you, Paul Lemons. I'm grateful for that as well. There is some interesting things that happened in the realm of Freemasonry since yesterday, or since, yeah, technically yesterday. Specifically, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Indiana put out a statement. I'm going to read that, I think, on the 1 p.m. stream. Also, on the 1 p.m. stream, I plan to read out Rudyard Kipling's poem, Mother Lodge, or the Mother Lodge, because Saturday was the Independence Day for India. Freemasonry has been a part of India since the first lodge was formed in Calcutta. And Rudyard Kipling, who was a Mason and a British Army officer, wrote a poem. I think British Army officer, but he wrote a poem about his experience in a Masonic lodge in India and all the different faiths and backgrounds that were able to work together in unity. And I wanted to read that, which I'll read tomorrow. It's a compass, not a clock. So square compass. Oh, there you go, Mr. Peaceful. That makes sense. Thank you for the square compass. Much obliged. That's a good quote, Mayo and Oreos, and that's what I would want as well. Especially the second part. I would like it to be swift. Although I suppose technically, if you live 80 years and then let's say you have, a heart attack or a stroke and your death is imminent, you could even then argue it's not actually imminent. You've been dying for 80 years. I suppose all of us experience a long death in some ways. Natasha, welcome from Florida. Thank you for being here. Ross, thank you for being here as well. Please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button. I'd very much appreciate it. Also, I believe, let me double check to make sure I got this right. Um, it's the 20th anniversary since the United Nations passed the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I've talked forever about how we in Freemasonry can create a more accessible and welcoming space for people with a variety of different disabilities. I might talk about that tomorrow as well a little bit. Mr. Peaceful, as he should, as he should. Yeah, I mean, from the moment you are born, you are starting your path to death, you could argue. I know it sounds a little bit rough to say, but that's generally the experience. Because you're being a troll, Hungry and Homeless. You don't calm down and getting timed out once again. Um, Never heard of the affair of the cards. So I'm not sure. What's going to get me in trouble? Like, what am I looking up precisely? That's usually a bad sign if people start telling you to look up something on Google, end up getting banned. Affair of the Cards was a 1904 political scandal. It involved a secret filing system run by the war minister, General Louis Andre, which used data from Freemason networks to track the religious and political views of French army officers to block conservatives and Catholics from promotion. So basically, it was I don't know if he was a Freemason himself, but a General Louis Andre using data from Freemason networks to track religious and political views and block army officers from promotion. Well, even at that point, you couldn't really be a Catholic and be a Freemason. So I'm not sure how beneficial it would have been. Although, having said that, there are Catholic Freemasons. There were Catholic Freemasons then, and there were Catholic Freemasons now, Catholic Freemasons then. There have been Catholic Freemasons in 1717, probably. I don't know if they did. I mean, all I can imagine. Well, it says here a disgruntled Freemason assistant, Jean Baptiste Bidegain, leaked the copied files to right-wing politicians, exposing the operation to the public. I don't know if the Freemasons were keeping tabs on them or if this general was, and also happened to be a Freemason. The Grand Orient of France. Keep in mind, the Grand Orient of France is not recognized by my Masonic lodge, so or most regular Masonic bodies. Like, I could not visit the Grand Orient. From 1900 to 1904, the prefectural administrations, the Masonic lodges of the Grand Orient of France. I have to look into it more. I don't know enough about it. But I don't know why Masons may have information about their own members, I suppose. But even then, I mean, you know, you're not going to tell. Again, this was 1904. Like, when I joined, and they asked me, do I believe in a supreme being? I said yes. I explained what it was, but they didn't write down what my specific belief was. Although it looks like it did result in one good thing. the 1905 French law on the separation of churches and state, which was the strongest anti-clerical measure of the earliest 20th centuries. I'm one who believes we should have a separation of church and state, so I guess that's a good thing. Um, well, I'll look into it because it's interesting. I mean, thank you for showing it to me, but I never heard of it before, so I have to read into it more to know what it's about. I'm not sure how or why the Masons would necessarily have this information, or what the information was precisely. I mean, I can tell you, we in Freemasonry, we're not keeping track of our Masons' religious beliefs, and certainly not non-Masons. Yes, TX Loner, I am a fellow Mason. I've been a Freemason for 20 years, TX Loner. I started this channel to promote the ways Masonry is relevant to our communities and to turn my passion for Freemasonry into profession. Smokey says Freemasonry is a cult that needs to go. It is not a cult, and it does not need to go. Well, then anybody who did that should have gone to jail. Although in 1904, my suspicion is they probably had different views on that. Am I allowed to park? ICE. I am not Pete Rose. I am allowed at the park. I don't think you're a federal agent. Let's put you in a bit of a timeout over here. I've been a master for 6 years from Texas. Welcome from Texas. I mean, Orthodoxy, I'll look more into it, but I don't, it's nothing I can speak to right now because I know very little about it. I will say, though, Grand Orient of France is not a recognized Masonic body in many locations. Like, I can't visit their lodges, so you can take that for whatever it's worth as a general rule. Because I also think that they're a liberal order. I have to look into it. I've been a master for 6 years. Where in Texas? TX Loner. I'm assuming that means Texas Loner. I've been to Masonic lodges in Texas. I've loved it. Specifically, Fort Worth, Dallas, also Gonzales, Texas. I'm not Beetlejuice. Jessa, there are many Freemasons who are Christian, and there are many Freemasons who believe in Jesus Christ. Freemasonry is not a religion, so we have members of all different religious beliefs. Well, I mean, there you go. I'm not one who's opposed to any type of I don't believe in getting too shirty about clandestine versus not clandestine. It's not really something that interests me. My view on it is, my focus on it is, I just want to be the best Mason I can be within my jurisdiction and to and for those lodges where I'm recognized. This is my job, Mr. Palad. So help me out. Mayo, I've been lucky, knock on wood. My stomach is still doing pretty decent when it comes to different foods. So, Take X Loner, have you, like I said, what part of Texas, if you don't mind my asking, and have you ever had the chance to visit any Masonic lodges up here in Canada? San Antonio. I've never been to San Antonio, sadly. But like I said, I love Texas Freemasonry. I think one of the crown jewels of Freemasonry is the Texas Masonic Retirement Community, which is located in Arlington, Texas. It is an incredible spot, and it shows just all the incredible things that Texas Masons do and can do. And, we have recognition with Texas Freemasonry. I visited a lot of Texas lodges. What's my opinion on Islam? The same as my opinion on Judaism, the same as my opinion on Christianity, the same as my opinion on anything. I think it's whatever your religious affiliation is, it doesn't stop you from being a good brother, nor from being a good neighbor, a good friend, a good citizen, a good worker, a good colleague. And that's what Freemasonry cares about, and that's what Freemasonry is concerned about. So I think if Freemasonry had a centralized power, it'd be a double-edged sword. There would, by definition, be fewer clandestine operations because everything would be centralized, right? And it'd be much easier to coordinate and kind of put a stop to a clandestine group developing. But the danger of having a singular centralized governing structure is if that governing structure becomes corrupt, then the whole thing becomes corrupt, right? One of the reasons I always say Freemasonry, by definition, cannot be corrupt and cannot be corrupted is because there is no centralized authority that controls it. So, for example, the lodge in France, I can't remember the name of it. You know, it gets up to bad things and shenanigans and potentially illegal things. That doesn't reflect upon or corrupt the rest of Freemasonry because we're separated. We're separated by recognition. We're separated by um, regularity. We're separated by jurisdictions. And so the benefit of not having a centralized authority is that basically Freemasonry as a whole cannot be corrupted. Um, Individual lodges can be, but that doesn't mean that it affects the whole. The other benefit of keeping things decentralized is it gives people freedom to experiment. For example, if you have one central authority in Freemasonry, the danger is, if it tries something and it fails, all of Freemasonry has to eat that failure together. But because we're decentralized, Texas can try something, a new initiative. If it works, great. Other people in other jurisdictions can adopt it. If it doesn't work, yes, Texas takes a hit, with whatever didn't work. But other jurisdictions won't take that hit. They can still look at Texas, what they did, and figure out, okay, what was the idea behind it? Where did it fail? And how can we do it better? It's the federalist approach to governance, right? The reason why it's beneficial to have like different states is Arizona can try something, and if it works, other states can try it. If it doesn't work, other states aren't affected by it, you know. So that's why I think ultimately it's much better to have a decentralized Freemasonry as opposed to a centralized Freemasonry. Um, I reckon Conflict with the Simpsons was a Freemason. Maybe he was. Hello, Chronic. Um, well, Freemasonry is by definition democratic. I would say Freemasonry has always had at its core democratic ideals. There's a reason why the Worshipful Master, for example, is term limited and is voted by his membership, right? Freemasonry, I think, is always viewed at its core level that when governing of other people, power should be properly assigned from the people themselves, the consent of the governed, if you will. Um, Orthodoxy, I feel like you're just going onto Google and typing in Masonic scandals. Um, Hungry and homeless. I mean, it might be suspicious to you, but that doesn't mean it's suspicious to everybody. Um, as somebody who grew up with it, my dad was a Freemason. Um, well, it didn't go so well because the Calais Law did end up resulting in the uh, Cristero War. Um, I'm sure they're verified, but also look up, all the charitable work and good works Freemasonry has done. Um, Goodbye, Bartholomew. Thank you for being here. Who, the actress? Hayden Panettiere, I think her name was, from Scream 4? I did. That was very sad. Because I really loved Scream 4. I think it's my favorite Scream and a really great movie. Um, well, what I'm saying is there's no tension between, like, whatever the Catholic Church may think of Freemasonry. I'm telling you, from my perspective, there's no tension. If a Catholic wanted to join Freemasonry in my lodge, he'd have no issue joining. And like I said, Freemasonry is very prevalent in the Philippines as well as in Brazil, where it's a primarily Catholic population. So the idea of there being, at least for me and in my experiences, since I joined, um, there's never been any tension on our end. It's about belief in supreme being, and that's the end of it, right? Um, and also, just because a Mason does something in office doesn't mean it's a reflection on Freemasonry, right? There are probably a lot of Freemasons who disagreed with the president on that decision. In the same way, there were Freemasons on both sides of the American Civil War. There were Freemasons on both sides of the American War for Independence. There were Freemasons on both sides of many, political, military escapades. Um, 33rd. I mean, I prefer animals to people, but it really does suck, Mayo, that she passed away. Um, that she died, I should say. I mean, yes, TX. Freemasonry is a process. That is one of the things that people sometimes forget about Freemasonry. Ultimately, Freemasonry is a process. There's no end point to it. We're always developing, we're always growing. Freemasonry, despite the fact that Freemasons will claim it never changes, Freemasonry has changed throughout history and it'll change again because human nature is something that changes all the time. TX Loner, please take a moment to mark on your calendar August 21st, starting 2 p.m. We're going to be doing a 24-hour celebration of this channel. We're going to be talking about the Masonic Medical Research Institute, which is going to be a blast. I can't wait. We're going to be celebrating this channel, all of its successes as well. That's starting August 21st, 2 p.m., and goes to August 22nd at 2 p.m. Humans change all the time. Now, human nature may not change, and that's probably somewhat fair, but it's always in our nature of human beings to advance. I mean, look at the way we were living 500 years ago to the way we're living now to the way we're going to be living 500 years in the future if we make it to 500 years in the future. There's a lot of change. Human beings are constantly changing, innovating, updating, advancing. It's kind of our nature to want to change, at least thus far. Rick, you're not wrong. I mean, I'm one who believes in evolution, right? And we evolved in groups for a reason. We evolved in groups because it is how we can survive in nature. We don't have we don't have claws, we don't have, fur to keep us warm. We don't have sharp teeth. We're not as strong as other animals, but we have each other. Um, Maybe orthodoxy. That's a really interesting question, I think. To what extent does technological advances change us or change our nature, or does it at all? I'm not so sure you can say that with 100% accuracy, orthodoxy. Um, I mean, Sakna orthodoxy is a Christian, a Catholic specifically, I believe. Now, you can argue some, Catholic traditions come from the pagan faith. I'm sure that's true, but that doesn't make them any less valid. I mean, if anything, it maybe is a mark in his favor in that it shows there is a historical, throughout history, humankind has been drawn in a certain direction or towards certain consistencies or practices. Maybe. Um, well, that is true. Orthodoxy is cool. Like, there's stories of, for example, uniform tablets being found 5,000 years ago of people complaining about, like, writing customer complaint letters. That's something that could come from today. And within Freemasonry, I agree with that 100%. Like, you go back and you read the Regius poem of 1390 or the Anderson Constitutions of 1723 or the Cook manuscript. And what you see from, 500, 400, 300 years ago is, like, I remember reading the Regius manuscript, which dates to 1390. Actually, now they think it dates a little bit later to like 1450. But anyways, and the whole back half of the Regius poem is an entire admonition and discussion on how to act at a banquet and not to get too drunk, not to get too intoxicated, to, represent yourself well and the people around you well, or your fellow Masons well. Because as a as a stonemason, you could be expected to be invited to a banquet for the castle you were working on. And it's funny, that was, from 1390. And here we are, um, 500, 600 years later, and the Grand Lodge of Ontario every year sends out a reminder to lodges that if they're serving alcohol or having a banquet, to do so responsibly and safely. So we're getting the same admonition 700 years apart from the Regius poem, which is the first of the old charges, at least the first of the old charges written in English, through to, 700 years later, basically. It's fascinating. Um, we must respect each other, Rick. I don't disagree with you. Um, I don't think I've never heard any Masons say that we can create a new man. I don't really know what that means precisely. Um, I mean, you are who you are. Like, we're not trying to create a new version of you. Maybe in some ways you could say a better version, but even that, I'm not a huge, I mean, the rough Ashler to the new Ashler. I think we need to be really careful, though, with how we define better. Like, certainly, I think if you are a Freemason and you comply with the ethics of Freemasonry, you will be a better neighbor, a better citizen, a better friend, a better colleague, a better family man. But that doesn't necessarily equate with being a new man. Again, I use the example a million times. If you join a football team, um, the lessons you learn from being a football player, teamwork, practice, physical health and fitness, sportsmanship, they'll make you better on and off the field. But I don't know if it makes you a new man, at least not literally. Um, well, I mean, tabula rasa, the blank slate, I think that pre-exists the Enlightenment, right? I could be wrong. Let me double check when it first pops up. Um, so it was popularized by John Locke. It was used by age own writers. So he was, yeah, one of the Enlightenment era thinkers. But I mean, I can say within Freemasonry, I've never heard anybody use the term like we're creating a new man or like a blank slate. You're coming into Freemasonry the person you already are. If anything, I think one of the biggest things that we need to do in Freemasonry is be more and have more recognition um, of the person that's coming in. Um, like, if you are, let's say, you're joining Freemasonry and you're really good at computers, we want you to bring those skills and interest into Lodge because we could be better with computers, for example. Um, well, I mean, I like the Enlightenment in a lot of ways. Voltaire is one of my favorite philosophers of all time. Ben Franklin, you know, Diderot, Condorcet, all of whom were Freemasons, are some of my favorite thinkers, my favorite philosophers of all time. One of my favorite quotes from Voltaire is, "We're responsible for all the good we do not do," which I really like. Um, I mean, what I would say though is I don't think they wanted a clean break with traditionalism just for the sake of the break with traditionalism. Like they didn't want to break for no reason. Um, and when you say not bound by our nature, I mean, I think what they wanted to focus on, and certainly, Voltaire, it was rather the idea that our nature can be one of rationality and science and a focus on understanding the world around us. And more importantly, the idea that authority should be granted or given through democratic means, through the consent of the governed. That's why I think they so often took to Freemasonry, and Freemasonry took to them because it was a democratic institution, right? No one gets to become the worshipful master of a lodge by divine right. They're voted on by their members. And they believed in tolerance of different religions and different religious beliefs. Certainly, if I recall correctly, it was Diderot, or I always forget which one. I think it was Diderot, whose emphasis was on equality of the sexes, even, which was very progressive for the time. Um, well, I mean, I think Cicero was orthodoxy is cool. I could be wrong. It might have been, you might be right, Aristotle. I thought it was Cicero who first came up with tabula rasa. Or maybe he's the first who used the term tabula rasa because it's a Latin term, right? Um, well, no, I mean, there was rationality throughout history, but that rationality, I think, always had a touch of, not always, but a touch of divinity or like it was done in a religious context, right? And I think the Enlightenment era philosophers were the first to really emphasize that rationality can be separated from religion, which I think is fair. I think that's a good thing. Um, and look, Freemasonry adopted some of these ideas, but not all of them. I mean, Voltaire famously was a Freemason, but he was a Freemason for 1 month before he died. He joined a month before his death. Um, you know, Skywalker, I've read the Gospels before, but it's been a long time. Thank you, Bend. I do not know anything about the Lodge in Stoughton, Mass, but I'd love to learn more about it. Um, I mean, the ability to offer a pithy one-liner is a pretty big deal, for the record. That's not an easy thing to do. I don't know much about Aquinas, to be fair. Thank you, Dolly. I know this, Michael Knowles, who's on YouTube, obviously, with the Daily Wire. I know he's a big fan of Aquinas. Um, you know, um, I'm in Windsor, Ontario. I'm the currently worshipful master of Border Cities Lodge number 554. I'm past master of Windsor Lodge 403 and Harmony 579. Skywalker? I mean, I've read the Bible. It's been a long time, so I'm not going to pretend like I could even probably quote them at this point. Um, he might have been. I mean, Orthodoxy, I wouldn't be shocked. I would say, though, I think you got to be really careful. Like Aristotle and Aristotelian ideas are valuable, but I do think that um, I do think he is a little bit under, what's the word? Like, the problem with Aristotle, and the biggest mistake that Aristotle made, and you see that across the board, is Aristotle believed that you did not need to actually observe, you could just reason things, or you didn't need to test things, right? Which was so damaging, I think, to science over the long haul. Like, for example, the belief that heavy objects fall faster than light objects. He never really tested that. It wasn't until famously Galileo started dropping balls from the Leaning Tower of Pisa or actually sliding them down an inclined plane of different weights. He was able to confirm that that was not the case, right? If he had been less willing to rely exclusively on the ideas in his mind and more willing to actually observe and develop a scientific method, who knows how much more advanced we would be. At the same time, I don't want to knock Aristotle too much. He was certainly very valuable in a lot of his thinking. Um, no, Gus, and I've already taught you this before, there were no Freemasons on or involved in Epstein's Island. Um, Is there a lot of counterfeit Freemasons? So, Mr. Peaceful, when you talk about counter, um, when you're talking about counterfeit Masons, really what you're talking about is what's called clandestine or irregular Freemasons, which is not exactly the same thing. A clandestine Freemason would be a counterfeit Freemason. It is somebody or a group that is claiming to be Masonic, maybe even stealing symbols. Maybe they even got their hands on a ritual book and are using that, but they're not recognized by any Masonic lodges, or they're not recognized by any Masonic groups. So it'd be like me starting my own lodge in my apartment and calling it, Cameron's Masonic Lodge number one. Um, I'll check that out. Orthodoxy is cool. That would be clandestine. It's not legitimate. It's no different than if I, you know, told people I was a dentist and started inviting people into my house to do dental work. I would be a fake or a clandestine dentist. That does happen in Freemasonry because people very often will use the term Freemason to try to scam people out of money. They'll call themselves a Freemason. They'll say, you give me $500, I'll make you a Freemason as well, or something. Send out a Facebook message and then just scam them for their money. That happens, unfortunately, a lot. Irregular, very often what irregular means is it is a Masonic group or order that actually has a significant history, is not trying to scam people. It's a legitimate club of some sort. But for whatever reason, they choose to do things in a way that we don't approve of. And as such, we don't recognize them officially. So, for example, the Grand Orient of France. It's been around forever, but it is irregular. Co-Masonry has been around forever, but it is irregular, meaning no one in there is lying or pretending to be something they're not, but there's a dispute or disagreement between the way the work is done and some modes of recognition or some landmarks. Like co-Masonry, men and women meeting in the same lodge, right? We don't recognize that. We don't consider it regular because for us, it's important that Freemasonry remain either fraternal or a female exclusive organization, the Order of Women Freemasons, and then AF&AM Freemasonry. Um, well, so I mean, from what I understand, Orthodoxy, and again, I'm not a philosophy expert. Both so Plato, he was most famous, and I think it's a good way to think about things actually um, as a way to kind of a very valuable thinking exercise, the Platonic ideals. And I think the reason why they're so important is it points us toward the good. But a lot of people say you can't, understand what the good is without a religious faith or religious backing. I've never believed that to be the case. And one of the reasons I don't believe that to be the case is the idea of the Platonic good. So, for example, there is a Platonic good version of a water bottle. You know what that is it is the water bottle that is best able to hold liquids while at the same time to be held in one's hand, while at the same time to be able to transport easily. All these characteristics that would go into the perfect water bottle, that doesn't exist in real life because nothing here on earth is perfect in a Platonic sense. But if I were to design a water bottle, I will first start with the Platonic ideal in my mind and then use that Platonic ideal to try to get as close as I can to it here on earth. And then you refine, and you refine. So I love the idea of the Platonic ideal. I do that with Freemasonry as well, right? Um, when I'm thinking to myself about organizing a Masonic event or a Masonic celebration, the first thing I think of is, okay, what is the Platonic ideal? What would be the best, most perfect version of this event? What would be the best and most perfect version of this Masonic celebration, whatever it is? And then I try to plan and organize in such a way as to get as close to it as possible. And the closer I get to that ideal, the better it is, or the more good it is. The furthest away I get from it, the less good it is. Um, but I think Aristotle was anti-observation in the sense that he observed things on Earth, but he didn't experiment on Earth. So, for example, he observed that if I hold a heavy rock in my hand, it feels like it wants to fall to the earth faster than if I hold a light rock in my hand. But he never actually did the experiment of sliding them down an inclined plane and seeing that they actually fall at the same rate. One of my favorite uh, physicists, a guy called Leonard Susskind, um, said, we know that F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. Aristotle would have said force equals mv, force equals mass times velocity. Because he never went ice skating. Aristotle, so this is from Cambridge University. Aristotle did not conduct controlled quantitative experiments in the modern scientific sense. Instead, his scientific method relied heavily on systemic observation, dissection, logical deduction, and categorization, rather than manipulating nature through active experimental intervention. Really, in inventions. Well, Cambridge University disagrees with you, as does Stevens History, as does Wikipedia. Um, he didn't use modern experiments because, in fairness, why he didn't use modern experiments, natural versus artificial. He believed that true natural science meant watching how things behave naturally on their own. Forcing or altering conditions through an experiment would yield artificial results that distorted a substance's true nature. I mean, keep in mind the scientific revolution, which would be Galileo and then Isaac Newton, was about what, 2,000 years after Aristotle? Aristotle was around, 384 to 322. The scientific revolution, let's say it started with Aristotle, which would be in the 1600s. But the first, it wasn't until you had people like certainly Newton, where the idea was actually, no, we can't just observe the world. We actually have to do experiments and test out our theories. It's not enough to just observe. Orthodoxy, you need to calm down a little bit. I don't think you're too dumb, Mr. Peaceful. I mean, this is not overly about Freemasonry, although to be a Freemason, you must believe in, I think, rationality is a very important part of being a Freemason personally. Um, well, all I'm saying is Aristotle was not performing experiments. He did not think they were necessary. And I think that was a major blind spot in his ideas and in his science, because basically, and he wasn't alone, it took about 2,000 years, well, not quite that much, about 1,600 years for people to get to the point where they actually realized it wasn't enough to just observe. You actually had to experiment and test things. And if his not recognizing that, unfortunately, I think it did potentially hold us back somewhat. If he had been more willing to perform experiments, maybe we would have discovered certain things a lot quicker. All right, Orthodoxy, fine. I think you and I just disagree on this, which is fine. Well, Azorian, I mean, it's not about the spinning of the Earth. The Earth has mass. That mass is, that two objects attract each other based on their mass. That's all. Technically, what the Earth is doing, the mass of the Earth is distorting the space-time and creating basically a funnel that forces, rocks and things to fall into it. It was Isaac Newton who really first discovered gravity, and then it was our friend Einstein who, in fact, through the general theory of relativity, which is really, really cool. The general theory of relativity famously turned geometry into turned gravity into geometry. So as a Freemason, uh, who recognizes the importance of geometry in our lives, in learning, in understanding the world around us, um, one of the beautiful things about that is that we now recognize how important geometry is to our understanding of the whole universe. In fact, the NASA and European Space Agency um, satellite is named, or one of them is named the Euclid, or named the Euclid Space Mission in honor of the father of geometry, Euclid. Orthodoxy, calm down, stop being a twat. Like Jesus. Aristotle didn't perform experiments. That's all I'm saying, at least not in any type of modern or current sense. And maybe I wouldn't have done them either if I had not existed or if I had been alive 2,000 years ago. But I do think that was unfortunately, not just with him, but with most people, a, um, a blind spot. And if they had been recognizing the necessity of experimentation, perhaps we would have discovered certain things a lot quicker. Who knows? Maybe we wouldn't have. Um, well, no, it doesn't have anything to do with it doesn't have anything to do with the spinning of the Earth. It has to do with gravity and how you define and calculate gravity. Newtonian equations show how it works. But again, the reason they came to those conclusions was because they tested it, right? Because just based on observation without experimentation, it makes sense to assume that heavier objects are going to fall faster than lighter objects, right? Certainly, if you're holding a heavy object in your hand and a light object in your hand, it feels like the heavy object wants to fall faster or wants to get to Earth more. Actually, I think that's famously one of the things Aristotle said, um, uh, which was that heavier objects, like everything wants to go to its natural place or its natural home. And the natural place for like a rock was on the earth. And the heavier the object is, the faster it wanted to get to its home. Something to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Um, all right, Orthodoxy. You're right. Fine. Jesus Christ. Um, so, I mean, I remember, you can check out with what's his name? If you type in Newtonian laws of gravity, it shows you the calculation that is used. But no, it's not about the spinning of the Earth. It's about simply the mass of the Earth and the mass of the other objects, which balance each other out. Um, don't use the Lord's name. My channel, Bull, I can use any names I so choose. You don't have to be here, right? You're welcome to start your own channel as well and talk about whatever you want. And also ban people who use the Lord's name in vain. Um, I wouldn't use the Lord's name in vain in a Masonic Lodge meeting because I would not discuss religion within a Masonic Lodge. But here it's a little bit different. Um, just one. I mean, now you're getting into religion. I will say personally, I'm not one who believes necessarily in the Bible as being literally true. I'm not a Christian. There are some who do, some who don't. If you are Christian and you believe in like a literal version of the Bible, including a literal version of Noah's Ark, then that's more power to you. Um, right? We have Freemasons who believe in all sorts of different things. Um, what I'm saying is laws of logic are not enough. You need to experiment to confirm what your ideas and observations are telling you. And orthodoxy, we're going to stop talking about it. If you bring it up again, you're going to be in timeout because we're not here to discuss the value or not value of Aristotle. I'm not sure if he's your dad or something and you're some type of time traveler from the past. Uh, Aristotle got a lot of things correct. He also got a lot of things incorrect. Um, and one of the things he got incorrect was his failure to recognized the necessity of experimentation and observation of those experiments. One of the things he got right was the laws of logic. I mean, and also in his poetics, he got a lot of stuff right as well. But he got a lot of stuff incorrect at the same time. And I think the failure or the inability to recognize the value of experimentation is a big one. It was a big blind spot throughout most of history. Like, again, until the scientific revolution, it was a major blind spot. And also, it's still a blind spot to a certain extent nowadays, right? One of the biggest issues I think we have now is people very often will rely on logic to come to conclusions, but they won't test those conclusions, right? So, for example, or what seems logical to them, like quantum theory is not the most logical thing on the face of it, but all the experiments prove that it is the case. So that creates a problem, right? If your logic or your mind tells you A, but experimentation produces result B, maybe that's a sign that we're unable to truly grasp the universe. Um, I mean, Casey, I don't think any democracy or any religion wants you to not believe in Jesus Christ. I can tell you this, Freemasonry would never tell you not to believe in Jesus Christ, um, nor will it make you renounce your religious beliefs. Um, right? That's one of those things where um, uh, there's a misconception about it. Now, personally, you can believe whatever you want. And I would say any government, any democracy, or any religion, well, by definition, a religion will tell you what to believe and what not to believe, right? So if you're part of the Christian faith, they're going to tell you, like, the Muslim faith is wrong or whatever it is. I don't think any democracy should tell you what to believe or not to believe. And certainly Freemasonry would never tell you to not believe in Jesus Christ. Um, and Orthodoxy is cool. I'm not so, I mean, let me double check that. Um, so I think you're referring to the prime mover. But I think Aristotle believed in the Greek gods. He may have just believed in one god above them called the prime mover. Like um, he would use the term like the gods in his writing, but it could have been he was writing for other Greeks who were polytheistic, and maybe he was writing so they would understand it. Um, but I don't know. He may have felt there were many gods and a prime mover above them, kind of thing. Although certainly he wouldn't have understood it in a Christian context. But I think he used the term the gods in a lot of his writings. So I'm not so sure about that. Um, I think you're putting more onto Aristotle than I think you're putting more of what you want Aristotle to be onto Aristotle than what he actually was. Jesus was neither black nor white. Jesus, I suppose he was Middle Eastern, right? Part of the thing is if you believe he was God brought to earth, by definition, he had to look like something. He couldn't look like everybody. So he would look like the people of the area in which he was born. Wien, I have no idea what that is. I believe in a squared plus b squared plus c squared. If you're talking about the geometric principles, Wyon, please like and subscribe. Yeah, but I think based on his writings, I mean, again, Aristotle used the term the gods in the plural sense all the time. Um, I also don't think he considered the prime mover to be one who cares for humans. Um, I think that might have been a later interpretation by guys like Aquinas to make Aristotle believe what they wanted him to believe. Because, I mean, you look at Dante's Inferno, if I recall correctly, in Dante's Inferno, Aristotle does not make it to heaven. Aristotle is still in hell, I think, right? because he was not a Christian, if I recall correctly. I haven't read Dante's Inferno in forever either. Aristotle in Dante's Inferno. Or maybe Purgatory? So Aristotle is in limbo, the first circle of hell. In Canto 4 of the Inferno, Dante sees him sitting in a philosophical family with other great Greek and Roman thinkers. Virgil points Aristotle to Dante, calling him the master of those who know. Um, I'm curious when Dante wrote the Inferno. Now, and I think about it, I wonder if there's any Masonic references to the Inferno. Again, it's been so long. Oops. I haven't read the Inferno in forever, so I have to double check this. 1308 and 1314. What's interesting is he would have written it just after the Knights Templars were disbanded, but well before modern Freemasonry began in any sense of the term. Freemasonry began again 1634. Curious though. I wonder if there's any references to stonemasonry. Um, yeah, interesting. I was looking that up because I was curious. I mean, obviously, Freemasonry started way after Dante's Inferno, but I figured maybe we as Freemasons could have borrowed some. I mean, maybe geometry is very important in the Inferno. Um, I think limbo, isn't limbo another term for purgatory? Um, oh, Wian, I don't know anything about programming language, or how to program anything. So I do, but I mean, Dante was a pretty religious figure. My point is simply, I think my concern with what you're doing is I think that you are, maybe this is why you seem so obsessed or in love with Aristotle. I think you're putting more into Aristotle than he actually meant. I think that you want, because you like his work and because he's so famous, you are trying to make him more in line with your beliefs than he actually was. You got to be careful about doing that. And that's something you have to be careful about orthodoxy across the board, right? So, for example, I think very often you have pre-existing ideas about masonry and you try to fit information that you get about Freemasonry into those ideas. Or with Aristotle. It's a very big leap for me to say that you can consider Aristotle to be some type of early Christian apologist. I just don't see the evidence for it. I think the term prime mover was not nearly as Christian as you're making it out to be. Um, Sacred geometry, that's a good point, Joseph. And that's something worth checking out. Like, sacred geometry was of vital importance to stonemasons. I think that's incredibly true. I've talked on here in the past about special stone Masonic documents and how necessary they are, as a bridge between operative Masonry to speculative Freemasonry. In fact, I talked about that a couple of weeks ago on one of my channels, one of my streams. Let me see if I can find it now. Um, let's see. I gotta think of what it was called now. It's gonna drive me crazy. Dun, dun, dun. Here it is. Um, the Libro de Trazas de Cortes de Piedra, Book of Stone Cutting Designs, um, which was a very important operative Masonic book that kind of bridged the gap between speculative masonry and operative stonemasonry. No, Grin, you don't need to believe in a creator God. Um, you need to believe in a supreme being of some sort, but it does not have to be, it does not necessarily have to be a creator God per se. Like my supreme being is the rational nature of the universe as expressed through science and as expressed through geometry. I mean, orthodoxy, you're not wrong in the sense that, yeah, you can definitely take the idea of the prime mover and fit it into the Christian faith, but you could also take the idea of the prime mover and fit it into the Judaic faith, the Muslim faith, I suspect many other faiths as well. And so, again, I think you're putting a bit too much into it. And also, again, I have to go back. It's been a long time since my classics courses in school. I'd be hesitant, like, I don't think that, I don't think that Aristotle would have had the same understanding of it as a Muslim or Christian or Jewish person. I think that, like, I don't think that Aristotle, for example, would have believed that the prime mover was interfering in the day-to-day lives of people or was performing miracles or may have even been that concerned with humanity. It may have been a cause, the uncaused cause, but the extent to which he believed this prime mover was active in the day-to-day lives of people, which seems to be a fundamental precept of, again, I think you're putting too much into him. Um, but I mean, the idea of, I suppose, some type of unprimed, uncaused mover, it can fit into certainly the Abrahamic faiths. How's it going? I love the golden ratio, Robert, and I've taught about the golden ratio on my streams in the past. Um, right? I've very much enjoyed talking about the golden ratio in the past. It was actually one of those pieces of knowledge that was actually maintained and hidden by Freemasons. Sorry, not Freemasons, stonemasons, for like hundreds of years because it was a trade secret, right? It was the way that a stonemason ensured that they could get work because they were the only ones who knew how to calculate the golden ratio and create buildings based upon it. If everybody knew about it and could calculate it, they weren't going to get as much work. It was a trade secret, right? Um, I'll look up Avicenna. Um, and for the record, this is a completely separate note. I'm not one who necessarily believes in the prime mover argument per se. I don't think it necessarily holds that the universe must have an uncaused cause. I think the universe could be eternal, but I'll look them up. I mean, like recently, I was learning about the Hindu faith and Freemasonry. Again, you look at the Rudyard Kipling poem, a Freemasons or the Mother Lodge, which was set in India with Hindu Freemasons, as well as Christian and Muslim Freemasons and Jewish Freemasons. You look at the history of Freemasonry in India, it's fascinating. I should do more to talk about the history of Freemasonry in the Muslim world. I've talked a bit about it in Iran, um, Persian Freemasonry, but I should talk about it more. So, Greasy Ronnie, how's it going? Joseph, perspective is always important. Um, right, but the golden ratio 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. I used to be able to do it up to a lot more than I can now. Um, yeah, but that's assuming there was nothing and then there was light. I'm a believer in eternal inflation, which basically what I believe is there is a singular eternal kind of structure that probably isn't infinite, but is very, very big. And then within that structure, you have multiple big bangs happening all the time, but which result in different types of universes. So we just got lucky that this universe happens to be one which can have life. Other universes may, for example, have electrons the size of beach balls or something. Um, Well, that's true, Joseph. I mean, the universe has changed a lot. Not the universe, excuse me. Like different faiths have changed over time, beliefs change over time. Even if the core and fundamental tenets don't change, the way it interacts with the world around it does, obviously, right? That's a really cool part of it. We as Freemasons, I've said this before, we should always be studying things like history, science, the liberal arts and sciences, including Aristotle, going all the way through to Aquinas, Voltaire, Ben Franklin, Stephen Hawking, you know, um, Einstein, as well as I think we should study religions, not so much necessarily to apply them to our life the same way we apply science, but because we should have at least a baseline knowledge and understanding of the different religions that our brethren may be. If I'm sitting next to a Hindu, if I'm sitting next to a Christian, if I'm sitting next to a Muslim, I want to be able to have at least a basic understanding of his faith and kind of the core tenets of it and what he believes. Um, Maybe orthodoxy. I'm not quite sure what you mean. I mean, there's only, I think there's just two possible kind of beliefs. The universe is eternal, or the universe had a beginning. Um, it's kind of one or the other. I don't know which I prefer, um, because I think both maybe carry with it certain challenges. I just find it more likely that I just find it more likely that it was an eternal universe because I don't see evidence personally of kind of a creation. I mean, I see the world around me, but it seems fairly random in a lot of ways. Um, well, I mean, accountability. I mean, I'd like to think I'm accountable to nature, right? That's what I've always said. I like the Stoic philosophy. I don't think religion is evil, Cole. I would never be a reviler of religion. Well, I mean, an evolved ape. We're not actually evolved apes. We evolved from a common ancestor with apes, but that's kind of beside the point. I mean, you can recognize nature, right? So the Stoics, right? One of the things I loved about Stoicism is they define virtue as to live in accordance with nature. That is leading a good life. So, for example, I can see that, I can observe that if I jump off my balcony, I'm not going to, um, I should be able to observe that the rules of nature are such that I will fall to the earth. I don't need to do it myself. I can observe all the things around me that fall to the earth and how they fall. And I can see, and if I want to know how fast I can fall, I can experiment or whatever it is. But I can observe the universe, I can experiment upon the universe, and I can live in accordance with that. That is to live virtuously or to live in virtue. Um, I mean, animals are able to make observations. Animals are able to perform experiments, for that matter. There's all sorts of stories and videos of like a crow experimenting with different sticks to, get food out of posts and stuff. It's really cool. So I think we're definitely able to understand the universe around us and to live in accordance with that as much as possible. But we can't trust our senses exclusively. That goes back to what I was talking about before, right? We cannot trust our senses exclusively. We need to trust our senses, but we need to verify them through experimentation because sometimes our senses will lie to us. And that's why we need to rely on experimentation and measurement. Like, there's nothing in my senses, in my day to day life, that tells me I should be able to talk to people around the world, right? Like, nothing about my natural experiences tells me that what I'm doing right now is possible. But scientists were able to perform experiments on electricity and atoms and radio waves and sound waves and all the other things they don't understand and figure out how to create this beautiful technology that allows me to talk to people around the world. Um, Yeah, but I'm not as interested in the opinion on the origins of the universe. I'm interested in living in accordance with the nature of the world. Um, I have my strong suspicions about the nature of its origin, but those are just suspicions. I don't claim to know the answer for sure. I am wary of people who do, but again, you can have a theological or religious belief in the origins of the universe, and they can be Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever they are, or Bhagavad Gita. That doesn't preclude you from being, again, a good neighbor, a good friend, a good Masonic brother, right? As they say in the Anderson Constitutions of Freemasonry, you leave people to their particular opinions and particular ideas, and that's perfectly fine. Um, and you could very well be right. My concern, and I think the concern of Freemasonry, is more about how do we live a good life here on earth? How do we be good neighbors, good friends, good brothers, good whatever it is, right? Um, I mean, okay, orthodoxy, you can call them whatever you prefer. I don't know if it's a subconscious preference because I don't know why it's preferable that the earth has no beginning. Or the universe has no beginning, I should say. And by the way, the universe having a beginning does not mean it had to be the Christian God or had to be any God, right? Maybe there's some natural occurring phenomenon that results in the start of our universe, right? Who knows? We do not want to extinguish all the fires on the earth, but I'm certain that Freemasons want to extinguish the ones that are hurting people. And if they don't want to extinguish them, they want to help the people who've been negatively affected by them or impacted by them. In fact, there's been a couple of different special charitable efforts set up, including by the lodges in Spokane, Washington, and Scottish Rite in Washington State, as well as in Indiana, to help brethren who have been severely affected by forest fires, by flooding, by whatever it is. Um, well, I mean, that's the old. Well, but then orthodoxy, I would say that you're not being completely fair there because I suspect that if by God all you meant was a creator of the universe, that's one thing. But people within their religious faiths don't just mean that. They mean, a God who is a creator of the universe and, um, pays attention to human existence and has rules for us and has sin and has a Garden of Eden and created us, etc., etc. The idea of it's kind of the difference between theism and deism, right? Theism, deism, it allows for there to be a God or a prime mover, but does not allow for that God to necessarily be involved in our day-to-day lives or actions. So I think your definition of God is beyond and above simply a creator of the universe, because I don't think you're a deist. I think you're a theist. Welcome, Joseph from Salem, Oregon. Please hit like and subscribe. I would love to be, um, I would love to visit Salem, Massachusetts. I hear there's really cool Masonic history there that I'd love to check out. Um, I don't buy that orthodoxy. I don't think one has to follow the other. You're stealing a few bases there. I mean, if a deist would say a universe, a creator could create the universe, but then simply leave it to unfold to its own devices, um, which would allow for things like evolution and, 14 billion years ago, the universe is created, and then 4 billion years ago, Earth is created, and then 3 billion years ago, life is created, and then eventually it evolves into us. One does not follow from the other. Um, Too evil to hope? I'm not going to do that. So, Orthodox, you're stealing a few bases with your stuff there. But again, for me, I'm quite happy and pleased with my basic idea, right? Which again is I believe there's a rational nature to the universe. I believe we can understand that nature through science and geometry, and I believe that that nature is known to us. And by being known to us, we are able to make better choices in our lives and live in accordance with nature, um, which is something I love to do. Well, again, orthodoxy, you're stealing a few bases there, right? So the fact that all human cultures seem to have some form or version of transcendence or the transcendent, it could be that that's a sign that there is some truth to the idea of the transcendent, but then you have to figure out which one is true. Or it could be that there is an evolutionary benefit to us believing in something beyond ourselves as a way, for example, to deal with grief or sadness, or to keep us with hope, right? If we're dealing with, for example, a massive storm that's wiping out our village, but we believe in the transcendent, we may find the strength to keep going because God is watching, for example. Hello, Mr. Tyler. And Zonda, I am a Freemason. I've been a Freemason for 20 years. I started with I started because I wanted to promote the ways Freemasonry wasn't as relevant to our communities. I turned my passion for Freemasonry into profession. But these 1 a.m. streams, I do like to bring up a few Masonic points and add, my Masonic ideas to it. But they can have more general discussion and topics as well. I mean, again, orthodoxy. It could be that we are created with that knowledge on a psychological level, or it could be that the psychology of belief is evolutionary beneficial. I don't know if you can say for sure which is which, but you could be right. I'm just don't believe it myself. Um, but because I don't believe it myself doesn't mean I'm right. I could be wrong. I'm willing to take that risk. Because the human experience is very similar across different categories in the same way the laws of nature are. It's kind of like saying, why do pyramids look the same in any different culture, right? Pyramids look the same in Egypt and in South America and in India because there's just one way to make a pyramid that makes sense. There's only so many stories we as Freemasons can tell. The story of leadership is going to be pretty universal because it makes sense. And if anybody tries to tell a story that doesn't make sense, their society will collapse. Um, Zonda, I don't know what you're talking about. Our Masonic leaders are not going to jail. We're going to be fine. Freemasonry is not about hurting anybody or going to jail. In fact, one of the very first things we learn in Freemasonry is, I would say it's maybe the second or third thing we learn, even still in the entered apprentice degree, is we are to focus on and support the laws of the country in which we live or work. A Freemason is to be a good citizen of the place he lives and to be part of, where he works, to be good there as well, to follow the laws and the rules of the civil magistrate. Jester, I'm probably going to need a few more mods on August 21st when we talk about the Masonic Medical Research Institute. So I may have you mod then. We'll see. No promises because I'm trying to limit the mods. It's getting a bit crazy. Um, it's okay, Mr. Tyler. Um, you can leave him there. It's all right. He's being a bit much, but don't worry, Tyler. If I want to get rid of him, I will. He's not swearing. He's not swearing. I haven't seen him make any specific accusations. Um, Mr. Tyler, believe me, I'm getting tired of it too, but you get used to it. So a bit quick on that one, especially for these 1 a.m. streams where I just keep chatting about whatever. So um, um, I don't think it is entirely set apart from all of the life orthodoxy. I strongly disagree with you on that one. Um, there is all sorts of evidence that, I mean, that would be orthodoxy is cool. Um, Jester, I've taught that before. So, um, so this guy I like called Alex O'Connor, who's a YouTuber. He talks about religion a lot. He's an atheist. He said something, and I thought it was the best answer ever as to why, what evidence would make him believe in God. He said, if I discovered that animals did not suffer emotionally or physically on any level. So if we look at a dog or a cat or an animal and it seems to be sad or despondent, if it's not actually the case, the fact is almost all animals, especially mammals, but otherwise, they seem to be able to experience sadness, loss, longing, anger, bitterness, fear. They're able to organize themselves into groups, and in those groups, they're able to organize pack structures. And some of them may have religion in a certain sense. You could argue that some dogs seem to worship their masters. Um, I think human beings are far closer to animals than we give credit to. And how do we know they don't establish religions of some sort? They don't have the mental capacity or the, dexterity to form idols or communicate. But what we view as religion, they may have their own version of it, of worship, for example. I'd be very hesitant, orthodoxy. I think, again, you're putting way too much on humans and way too little on animals. Um, like one of the really good, well, I mean, animals and religion, I don't think animals have the cognitive capacity to form a religion, which is simply the rules and structure of worship. But to say animals don't worship, I don't know. Um, Another good example, there's a story I read about. It was elephants, where a pack of elephants was traveling through the African savannah, and they actually took a detour and stopped off at this elephant boneyard. And it turns out the leader of the elephant pack went and found the bones of, I think it was her mother. And anyways, picked up the bones in her trunk, and passed them around to the different elephants in the pack with her before moving on. I know it's out of the way as well. That tells me that there's something going on, right? Um, Beyond simply like that animals might be closer to humans than we give them credit for. Um, well, animals have a rational mind for sure. They have to, otherwise they couldn't survive. As for a creative mind, I don't know. But rational, certainly. Like, they need to be rational enough to make decisions. Like my cat has to be rational enough to eat food, to use a litter box, to, drink water. It has to make some type of rational decisions. And you can tell it does. Like, there's a reason, I'm able to leave my house and my cat is, I come back, my cat's still alive because my cat's not jumping into walls or something. I mean, animals make mistakes, but so do humans. I don't know if humans are necessarily more rational than animals. Um, I mean, I don't think they're pure instinct. Again, we've seen enough evidence of we've seen enough evidence of animals acting on things beyond instinct. I mean, again, maybe I'm not. Maybe you're seeing something different, but I've seen enough examples of animals experiencing or expressing emotions that tells me that it's beyond simply an instinctual thing. Um, There you go. Red-eyed night herons are pretty smart. They develop different skills and recognize human faces. Oh yeah. And there was this, there's been stories of, I think it was apes, like recognizing zookeepers years after and expressing seemingly happiness afterwards. Um, yes, orthodoxy, I have apes finger paint. They actually do pretty good stuff. So, yes. And actually, crows are supposedly really smart and are able to create art of a sort as well. Um, or at least they do trade. So, for example, they'll find rocks they think are pretty and they'll give them to people. Just kind of a cool little thing as well. Um, Orthodoxy, I mean, look it up. There's been many animals that have created finger paintings. So clearly they can. Um, Maybe life as a human. Well, so that's interesting, Mr. Tyler. I was at um, I don't know, look it up, Orthodoxy. Look up finger paintings by chimpanzees or by apes. You're going to see a lot of stuff. Um, I don't know, a big fan of this arrogance of humanity, Orthodoxy. You're just not the smartest, but you're trying. Maybe life is human is just a way of determine. So when I was talking at the Hindu temple this weekend, the person I talked to was describing to me and telling me how Hindus like believe in reincarnation. And in some ways, that's what he said. He said, like, when you live this life as a human, you'll come back in a next life as something else, but there's no guarantee it will be a human. It could be something else. Um, and he even said he thought it was possible to come back as like an inanimate object. Um, like, he said you can come back as even rocks and stones may have a type of feeling or a type of consciousness to them, which is a scientific term, right? Pan consciousness. Um, did I insult you? No, but Orthodoxy, I got to be honest, I don't think you're the smartest because you kind of keep on repeating the same points over and over again, and it kind of grows tiresome after a while. Um, I mean, I don't mind you being here, but yeah, I don't think you're the brightest, personally. I could be wrong. You might be smarter than me for all I know, but I don't see it. Whoa, Mr. Tyler. Again, I will say that because I will talk to people on the stream, but you don't talk to other people on the stream, you just talk to me. I don't mind if people call me an idiot either. Um, Also, I've tested a very high IQ. That could be true. I don't know. Um, Democrat power isn't very unattractive. Although I think IQ can sometimes be a misnomer when it comes to intelligence. I think the danger of relying exclusively on IQ is like I think there has to be more than just IQ. There's other factors that play into it as well. And I'm also hesitant about it. I've never had taken an IQ test. I have no idea what I would score. I might score very high or very low, or who knows. My suspicion is I'd score average. But I think the danger of that is it can make you very arrogant and make you believe you're smarter than you are, which is probably the biggest danger you have. You're better to think you're stupid than to think you're smart. Because if you think you're stupid, you're more likely to not become, not fall for scams. I forget what the term is, but there's a term for people who, when you believe you're really smart, you tend to be more likely to fall for scams and things like that because you believe you're so smart, you believe you can't be tricked. Um, Vote Democrat. I appreciate you saying I'm ugly, but you keep saying it. It's going to put you in a timeout for a few minutes. Um, yeah, I think sometimes the smarter you are, ironically, the not even it's not even that the dumber you are, the more it's kind of like hubris, right? You think you're so smart that you think you're not at risk of being fooled by anything. You think you're not at risk of being wrong. And so you end up falling for scams more easily. That happened a few times. Um, well, I think Mr. Tyler would disagree with you, but you can say uh, he's not unbiased if you want. Shu, what's your advice? What I will say orthodoxy is cool is when people say by every metric available, I'm highly intelligent, that's usually not a good sign to me. Um, Usually when people say that, or they say I'm very smart, I highly question if they are very smart. Usually the smartest people in the room don't think they're the smartest people in the room, at least in my experience, for whatever it's worth. Um, well, there you go. Mr. Tyler enjoys the stream, which I appreciate. I didn't call you stupid, although, like I said, I don't think you're the smartest. Um, right? I genuinely don't think you're the smartest. Well, I mean, this is a stream. Um, so when you're um, dominated the conversation, all right, Orthodoxy. Your moderator who attacked me frequently. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about there, Shu. If you got banned, there might have been a reason for it. Um, well, Shu, I mean, is there two people on here, Orthodoxy and Shu? Um, Dr. Greentip, it can happen. Um, well, Mr. Tyler, stop communicating with them at all. Just talk to me. You keep doing this, Mr. Tyler. It drives me crazy. Don't talk to Orthodoxy. Just talk about me or talk about Freemasonry. Um, I mean, lodges can clash with other lodges. Usually it's in a friendly way, Dr. Greentip. Like, for example, we're having a softball tournament coming up between a couple of different Masonic lodges. That is something that happens fairly frequently, and it's kind of fun, enjoyable stuff. If two lodges ever had like more of a conflict, it would be over things like regularity and recognition. I have, because I don't mind attacking people in the chat, and I don't mind people attacking me in the chat, but I don't want people attacking each other in the chat. That's the problem, because it distracts, and people end up looking at the chat and not focusing on me, which drives me crazy. Um, Joseph, that happens. So, what is the question about the Freemason Templar artifact? Um, Let me see if I can answer it, Joseph. So, what is the question regarding the Freemasonic Templar artifact? Um, all right, Orthodoxy. This is why I think you're not that smart, because you don't let things drop. I might, Mr. Tyler. I might, but I'll make the decision. Um, so, Joseph, um, what is the Templar artifacts that went unnoticed? What is the question? I'll see if I can answer them. I can't make any promises because keep in mind the Templars were about 300 to 400 years um, before Freemasonry, right? Templars ended in 1308 and Freemasonry started in 1634 or 1717. Well, that's fine. He can do that. Then he's back on. But stop talking about it, Mr. Tyler. So, um, I don't know if I can help you, Joseph. Like, if you want to send me pictures, you can, info@squareandcompass.ca, and I can try to take a look at them. Um, well, they were kind of warrior monks. Orthodoxy is cool. They were also kind of the first bankers in a lot of ways. There were a lot of different orders. Alberto Rodriguez, the Skull and Bones. The Skull and Bones is a non-Masonic order. It's a fraternity. I believe it exists primarily on Yale, though it may exist on other campuses as well. But exists primarily in Yale. And I think George Bush was a member of it, but it's not Masonic, nor is it Knights Templar. It's a different thing altogether. Some may join Freemasonry after being part of the Knights Templar. Joe King, I think I'm still about the same weight I always am. I think when I got the beard on, it hides my double chin. So that's the benefit of it. Um, I was hoping local Freemasons would be available. I mean, they could be, Joseph. There's no guarantees. Like, where are you from? But yeah, it happens a lot. People will show up to the local Masonic lodge or the local Masonic temple with, items that they found. It could have been from family, it could have been from friends, it could have been from like a grandfather passed away. Sometimes they find stuff in pawn shops and they just like it and they like the way it looks and they purchase it, right? Those type of things happen all the time. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with going to Masonic Lodge and expressing your interest. If you want me to take a look at it, I don't mind. You'd have to send me an email um, and ask me to, take a look at it. And I could, but I can't make any promises. I'm not an expert on Knights Templar. Um, Alberto, are you talking about my teeth? Does Arnold Schwarzenegger have a gap as well? I much appreciate it. Maybe one day Arnold Schwarzenegger will be a um, Freemason. Who knows? I don't think he is, though. Well, thank you for that, Sud. I appreciate it very much. Um, I mean, you can send to Orthodoxy is cool, I guess, if Orthodoxy is cool wants to put in his email address in the chat, though I would recommend not doing so. Um, let's not go putting our personal contact information in the chat. Um, Joseph, now you're getting really specific. That doesn't sound like a Masonic thing anymore. That sounds like something very different. You can still, um, you can still, all right, Mr. Tyler. You can still, uh, I mean, that doesn't sound Masonic to me. That sounds like a very different thing. You can still send it to me and I can take a look, but I'm not gonna make you any promises. Um, but I mean, there's Freemasonry in Spain as well. But this whole 28 monastery with symbols, that sounds like a completely different thing. Um, well, Orthodoxy, I mean, I guess I appreciate it, but you don't have to forgive me. I'm not looking for it. Um, but I mean, okay. I have engraved a Freemason logo on a firearm. That happens a lot, Dr. Greentip. I mean, it depends on your culture and like where you're from, but very often you will see, especially if you're from like a gun culture, like places in, let's say, Texas, where it's very common to see guns. Um, very often in those cases, what you see is people will engrave the square and compass on a gun or, on a rifle or even on a knife or whatever it is, if they're like a hunting knife. So, yeah, that doesn't shock me at all, Dr. Greentip. Yeah, hearts are in hexagons. I mean, the hexagon, you could argue that's a Masonic ideal because it's a geometric shape and Freemasons love geometry. But I'm not sure. Um, yeah, I know the Masonic term on the level. That's one of those terms, like there's a lot of them. Getting blackballed um, is another term. Square conduct, that's another Masonic term. So a lot of them are. Mr. Tyler, I mean, many people agree with you, including many Freemasons. Um, Shu, I don't know what's happening with you, but I'm going to put you in a timeout. You're just copying people now. We're going to put you in a timeout for 24 hours. Sorry, Albert. There is no eyes wide shut parties in Freemasonry. Psycho, I mean, I think you should always obey the laws of the country in which you live or work. I think also enforcement has to be done in a manner that is respectful of people's rights. So I'm not a fan of what's happening with ICE and everything like that. But certainly, I think we have responsibility to, in Canada, the US, wherever we are, to have a sufficiently powerful system to deal with illegal immigration in a humane, respectful way. So, for example, I think one of the biggest issues we've been seeing with illegal immigration is a lack of judges to deal with hearings and cases. I agree with you on that one, Mr. Tyler. I agree Friday the 13th is not as good as Nightmare on Elm Street. Mr. Tyler, I wouldn't say it's nothing. Um, because I do enjoy the Friday the 13th movies very, very much. However, I do think Nightmare on Elm Street is better. Well, Joseph, I mean, very often back in the day, you saw people, um, you were there was even a term for it. It was called like Barry the Joiner. They were parts of the Knights of Columbus and the Masons and um, the Knights of Columbus and whatever. They were part of a million different groups and organizations. It happened all the time. Um, there's even a derisive term for them. It was called Barry the Joiner, which was the guy who joined every group he could be a part of. But it's really because, civic engagement was considered so important and mattered so much. Well, it's not that I'm a Mason, therefore I'm pro democracy. It's the other way around. I think because I'm pro democracy, I'm naturally inclined to like Freemasonry or get a lot out of it. My suspicion is if you're anti democracy, you're probably not going to enjoy Freemasonry as much, right? Freemasonry is not going to change your view on things, but I think Freemasonry will in some ways reinforce your views on things. So if you believe democracy to be a natural good, Freemasonry is probably a good fit for you because so much of Freemasonry is democratic in nature, right? I'm not in Van Halen because I'm like this. I'm like this. Or sorry, I'm not like this because I'm in Van Halen. I'm in Van Halen because I'm like this. I don't, support democracy because I'm a Mason. I'm a Mason because I support democracy. Um, well, that's true, but like everything else, you find the balance. I mean, under that theory, if we get somebody in government the next time who has a completely different philosophy, would you support that? I mean, what I would say is I don't support ICE, which is why I would, if I could, I'm not American, but I would in the next election vote the way I'd like the world to be. And if I lose, I lose, so be it. I will still have my beliefs. And you just wait 4 years and you try again and you try again. Being pro democracy doesn't mean you agree with every decision that is made by the government. What it means is you recognize that there's a legitimate way to deal with disagreements at the ballot box. And in the States, that's every like 2 years at this point. It feels like there's another election. In a Masonic lodge, the worshipful master's in charge. He was voted in. He gets a say. If I want somebody else to be worshipful master, I just wait till the next year and I vote for a different worshipful master. Um, I don't know, orthodoxy. We'll see. Um, as a general rule, Mr. Tyler, I agree with you on that. But I also think, like with everything else in life, the balance has to be, you know, how do you enforce it, right? And do you enforce it in a way that's respectful of people's rights? For example, pursuant to the U.S. Constitution, to my understanding, American citizens are not required to carry with them proof of citizenship. So does that mean ICE can just go around to everybody they see and ask them for proof of citizenship? And in that sense, go against the constitutional rights of the typical citizen? That's the problem, right? Yes, Joseph. Masonic activities take up a large portion of my time. I would say Masonic activities take up the largest portion of my time. In a democracy, you have a responsibility not to support the will of the people. Well, I guess support it. You have a responsibility to advocate for your beliefs and then to vote in favor of your beliefs. And if you're not successful, to do your best to advocate for a change in the next election, um, right? Because otherwise, that's not a democracy. That's just a tyranny. Because at that point, the majority just makes a decision, and you're not able to say anything against it. I believe you should have the right to say what you think and what you feel, and advocate for those things, and try to get people to vote your way. But if you're not successful, you're not successful. You just try again in 4 years or 2 years. Um, Maybe they would. I mean, we'll see orthodoxy. I'm not so positive about that. What does it mean to not seem, Mr. Tyler, like a Canadian or American? Because now you're getting into dangerous categories. Is it a way you look? Is it a skin color? That becomes problematic, and I would think for obvious reasons that becomes probably. Um, I don't know what that means, orthodoxy. Um, But I guess my question is, if you were to lose the election and your guy were to lose, would you just go along with whatever was done, or would you try to advocate for your beliefs in the 4 years between elections? Um, I think they're great. I think Jewish people are great. I think Muslims are great. Hindu is great. As a Freemason, what I think is you can be Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or any other number of religions and still be a good brother, a good friend. Orthodoxy, that does not surprise me. But I guess what I'd say is I do, which is why, I mean, I'm not American, so it doesn't matter. But if I was American, I would not be trying to overthrow the government. I would just accept that the election was lost, and then I would do my best to advocate in 4 years to to have a new election and, vote for whoever is running, I guess, on the Democratic side, I suppose. Um, I never said my standard was I can't advocate for what I believe in. I said my standard is governance comes from the consent of the people, which means I have the right to tell the people around me what I think and ask them to change their opinions. If I don't succeed, I don't succeed, right? And so be it. Um, Dr. Greentip wants to be a dictator. Well, then you should not join Freemasonry, because Freemasonry, there's no specific, political beliefs, but definitely within Freemasonry, there is a major belief in democratic ideals. If a worshipful master, for example, tried to act like a dictator, he would not belong there. He would not be popular, that's for sure. Within Freemasonry, you're ultimately engaged in a democratic pursuit. Um, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, because I'm trying to turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. By the way, please take a moment to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Um, well, I mean, the people can decide anything, I suppose. But there's kind of an argument, it's kind of like the church argument about the choir, right? There does seem to be some type of strange system that happens where the more people you have in a choir, even if independently none of them are good singers, if they all sing together, it starts to sound pretty decent. I forget what that is called, but it's some type of phenomenon. That's the argument with democracy as well. If you have enough people taking part in democracy, the right answer, more often than not, is kind of found. Um, but, if you have one person controlling you and telling you what to do, or dictating to you what to do, you might be successful, you might not, but you're taking a big risk that the guy's going to be, an idiot. But if 50 million people are making decisions, that will average out perhaps to, generally speaking, a better decision, which I do think tends to be how it goes. Um, Orthodoxy, I mean, that does not shock me at all. I am not shocked at all that you think your values are the best. Um, I guess good for you. It must be nice to have that level of confidence in yourself. Um, a republic, if you can keep it, indeed. Um, Oh, this guy whose name I can't pronounce. I'm going to put you in a timeout. I mean, I will say Freemasonry, as a general rule, I think civic institutions, as a general rule, help people maintain their democracies. Um, well, I like to think some people have at least a certain level of humility about things, right? And recognizes they don't always know for sure. They're making their best guess. You seem quite sure of yourself. Orthodoxy is cool. I think that I don't necessarily know the ultimate good. I know, based on my experiences, what I've seen, values and ethics that result in better communities, better neighbors, better friends, better brothers. But if you're asking me for the ultimate value in a religious sense, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, I don't know. I can just go by what I see, which is the rational nature of the universe. Um, but you could recognize that maybe other people also think their values are the best, or maybe you could be humble and maybe say you don't know for sure what's the best, but you're doing your best to figure it out. Okay, Joseph. Yeah, many Freemasons have been part of the military over the years. Um, there are many Masonic lodges in the Middle East on Air Force bases. That's one of the really cool things that you see very often. Um, I'm sure that's true as well. Orthodoxy is cool, which is why, as you can imagine, I would not be voting for you in a democracy. I suppose then that leaves you with the choice of trying to convince other people to vote for you or taking over by force. Um, yeah, so, historically, one of the ways you saw Freemasonry extend throughout the world was through military bases, like in Calcutta, for example. In India, the first Masonic lodge was on a military base, and you still see that in the Middle East. There was, anyways, Masonic lodges on military bases in Dubai and in Qatar, and in Saudi Arabia as well, I believe. Um, I have the charisma of an oyster. Oysters are delicious, for the record. Um, Politics you're not allowed to discuss in lodge nor religion, but on this stream it does pop up, especially these 1 a.m. streams where I tend not to have any specific talking points. I just chat about whatever. Um, and that is what I find so scary about you. Orthodoxy is cool. Um, because if you want to take power by force, then I would have to try to stop you from taking power by force, and that forces me to use force. And now we're talking about civil war, which is not a good thing. Um, Maybe a little bit more tolerance. Orthodoxy is cool. Every scary person in the world has defined themselves as a nice guy. Villains don't know they're villains. Orthodoxy is cool. Um, in fact, I worked in a jail for many years and I was a probation officer for many years. And very often, the people who were most interested in controlling the actions of others describe themselves as nice guys. And you want to be careful about that. Orthodoxy is cool. Um, I think one of the things that Freemasonry kind of, in some ways, one of the ethics of Freemasonry is, I mean, maybe falls under temperance or prudence. Like, there's a hubristic element to this I'm a nice guy ideology, right? Like, it encourages us to remember that maybe we're not as good as we like to think we are. Maybe there's more for us to learn. Maybe there's ways that we can be better. Maybe there's people that we can learn around us. You know, it's not by actions orthodoxy is cool, right? I'm sure that you do a lot of good things. I've no question that you volunteer at the food bank. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure you do a lot of very good things um, in the world, but you want to be careful. Again, I think arrogance is a dangerous thing. I think the beauty of things like Freemasonry is it reminds us not to be arrogant. Same thing with, sports is another really great thing to take. if you want to remember not to be arrogant, a great thing to do is take sports. For that matter, take martial arts, because you'll get humbled very quickly and suddenly realize maybe you're not as good as you think you are. Um, what do I think of the stone the builders rejected? Isn't that a religious reference? Um, okay, the tall cedars of Lebanon, right, famously used in the building of King Solomon's temple. That is very cool. Um, I mean, if you want to join the Knights of Columbus, Joseph, I think more power to you. I like the Knights of Columbus. I've known a lot of Knights of Columbus. They're good dudes. They're good people. I mean, the time in history when the Knights of Columbus had the greatest membership numbers was also the time in history when there was the greatest number of Freemasons. So it's not like one is competing against the other. It's all about civic society and civic institutions, right? Um, and so, for that reason, and because of that, I have no issue. I mean, I can't tell you what to do, Joseph, but if you're looking at me to say anything negative about the Knights of Columbus, I definitely wouldn't. Um, I think the Knights of Columbus are great. Hello, synchronized. I don't know what the serious order is of which you speak. I mean, I'm sure the people of North Korea will say it's a great place to live, so long as, I suspect they may be a little bit under duress in saying that. Actually, Go JR, I just posted two clips, actually one clip about ancient Egypt and the pyramid builders and what they ate. It was really, really cool. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow on the stream, as well as read a letter from the Grand Lodge of Indiana. Um, uh, so I'm talking about extreme weather issues and how we as Freemasons can assist. Um, but yeah, one of the really cool things is a lot of people think that the pyramids were built exclusively by slaves, and some of the pyramid work was done by slaves. However, um, much of the evidence nowadays shows that for much of the pyramid building, there were in fact free professional men, stonemasons, the precursors to Freemasons, who actually did a lot of the work. So this idea of Freemasonry as being evolved from ancient Egypt is somewhat true. Um, I do not know what the Christos oil is. Do you mean the Christ oil? I don't know what you're saying. Um, Mr. Tyler, he's not trying to control the chat. You need to stop this, Mr. Tyler. I'm really losing my mind about you right now. He's has the right to say stuff. If I want to ignore him, I will. For Christ's sakes. Well, go, JR, go. I mean, you can go back to Stonehenge, which was an even earlier example. You can go back to Gobekli Tepe. I think I pronounced that correctly. You can go back to 3.3 million years ago when, our human ancestors on the African plains were chipping away and creating the first stone tools. I do not know what I think about that synchronized. That sounds like a religious thing. More power to you. Again, we have Freemasons of many different religious beliefs. And as for the stone, I've heard this phrase before. What I take it as the idea of the stone rejected by the builders. Well, I mean, stonemason homes, if you're built by stonemason, they're going to be better. Actually, Dr. Greentip, you got paid in food primarily. Usually, they were paid in food and shelter, including beer, fish, dates, garlic, greens, and lamb. So that is what they were actually paid in. And there's actually discussion of that in some Masonic rituals, what ancient stonemasons were paid in, how they received their wages. But most likely it was beer, ancient beer. It was breakfast, including honey and like flour cakes. then dates and raw garlic, then fish and greens, and then lamb and chickpeas. Um, so that is what they were built out of. Um, George Washington helped build the first home in U.S. history according to the building code. Maybe. I mean, I don't think so because, well, I guess like American history, that doesn't sound right to me, but I could be wrong. But that sounds very unlikely. I need to know more what you mean by that. Like, there were people in America well before George Washington was even born. It was in America at the time. Do you mean like after 1776? Um, I do not quite know what you mean by that. Evert TX, welcome. We have many Christians who are part of Freemasonry, as well as many Christians who are here on the stream. Um, and thank you, as always, for joining. Well, I mean, it was probably very weak beer, but yeah, they were given, breakfast of beer. Again, it's also about calories too. I mean, you probably needed a lot of calories to be working on the pyramids, whether you're working on them as a stonemason or a slave, right? Synchronized, I'm not a 33rd degree Mason, and even if I was, I wouldn't tell you. You'd have to learn on your own by joining. I think the better question is why do you care what the grand secret of the 33rd degree is? The foundation upon which all of Freemasonry rests is the third degree. That's the most important degree and the highest degree in Freemasonry. Um, Sometimes my thoughts take time to come. I mean, sometimes I try to answer things pretty quickly, but I definitely need to keep in mind, you know, I'm always trying to think. I'm always trying to gather what I'm going to say next. Um, Temperance. Honestly, synchronized, the secret is it's worth spending time with other people. And that's not a secret you need to join Freemasonry to find out. Everything else is equivalent to a family recipe. That's all. Um, Joseph. Sometimes I am. Sometimes it depends. I find like to be on stream, it's a challenge because I'm always trying to pick this balance between being honest about how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, which I think is important when I'm talking to people. If I'm not being honest about how I'm feeling, I think the audience will tell, but also trying to be mindful of the precise words you use. And trying to find that balance is really challenging. Yes, human like the rest of us. Despite what the conspiracy theories may say, Freemasonry and Freemasons are still human beings. I know you may disagree, but we are. Hello, B710. Thank you for being here. Oh, I saw your comment. Yes, I was in Chicago, but just for the day. I went there because my Patreons voted for me to visit Chicago or Illinois in honor of Masonic Membership Visibility Day. Um, so I really enjoyed being there. Unfortunately, Kami, Katsi, I think a lot of people agree with you. Please hit like and subscribe. Rage baiting is not Masonic, though. I'm never there for long enough, is the problem. I go for a day and then I'm back home. Go for a day, back home. But I love being there. It's my favorite city in the world. Like the city I love the most and is my home is Windsor. But the greatest city I think in the world is Chicago. Um, I mean, I don't want any ethno states as a general rule of thumb. There are times when there's exceptions, but I think one of the greatest strengths of America and Canada is the fact that it welcomes people of all different ethnicities and backgrounds and beliefs. I think that's one of the greatest strengths of it. Anglophila, please hit like and please hit subscribe. I would be much obliged. Yes, your Bears are moving, the Chicago Bears. I don't really follow football enough. I am not into witchcraft. I'm not into ceremonial magic. I don't believe magic exists, for the record. Um, so just for the record, I don't believe witchcraft exists or magic. I mean, I think you can use magic in like a very metaphorical word and just say like, oh, I love magic. The night was magical, whatever it is. That type of stuff can happen all the time, but I don't believe in literal magic. Um, oh, I'm very sorry to hear that, Joseph. I mean, I love Chicago, so anything that harms Chicago makes me unhappy, for the record. Oh, low-level Masons. I'm the highest degree in Freemasonry. I'm a third degree Master Mason. I'm also 18th degree Scottish Rite. Joseph, you and I agree. Also, really cool Masonic history there. Like, I could spend hours talking about the Masonic history of Chicago. The reason we have fire codes, modern fire codes, is because of a Masonic building in downtown Chicago that had a fire. It was a combination of Masonic building and theater. There was a fire, a lot of people died, and they realized they needed to update fire codes as a consequence of it. Um, I don't believe in Greek fireballs or ancient Egyptian magic either. Um, I mean, anything's possible, Mr. Tyler, but I doubt it. I don't think magic exists. I think everywhere has a lot of problems, Mr. Tyler. So I don't disagree with you on that. I think everywhere has a lot of problems, but I still do agree with you that it is a beautiful city. And I think those problems pale in comparison to how beautiful it truly is. All right, guys, this has been a long stream for 1 a.m., so I'm going to be ending it now. Don't forget, we're going to be having another stream tomorrow or today technically, at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about a letter from the Grand Lodge of Indiana. We're going to be talking also about, amongst other things, what ancient Egyptian pyramid builders ate, the Grand Lodge of Indiana, and how we as Masons are dealing with extreme weather issues. And we're going to be marking on our calendars August 21st, 2 p.m. Eastern, 24-hour stream. Orthodoxy, it just depends on what you're praying for. Like I said before, if you're praying for me to, be happy and find a good life, that's great. If you're praying for me to agree with you, you're going to be disappointed. And Mr. Tyler, that's your last warning. You can still see me, but if you bring up orthodoxy again in the chat, you're going to be hidden. I mean, orthodoxy, I wouldn't say you're very normal per se. I mean, I guess it's a very relative term. But like I always say, one of the rules on this chat is you can talk to me and you can call me whatever you want, but don't talk to each other on the chat unless you want to say positive things about each other. Like, for example, if you want to say synchronized, I love your name, that's fine. Or synchronized, I don't know. I also agree you need magic in you, but no arguing with each other on the chat, no bringing each other up in the chat, except to say positive things about one another. Orthodoxy, that's a problem. If everybody in your life agrees with you, that's a very big problem because it means you're not being challenged, you're not being tested, and your ideas are not being vetted, which I think, explains a lot. I can assure you of this, not everybody in my life agrees with me. In fact, one of the best things about Freemasonry is it welcomes people of different opinions and different ideas, and we learn how to work with each other um, despite having different opinions and different ideas. That's a really cool thing about it. If everybody agrees with me, then I'd be very concerned because I'm never going to be, that's not how you learn anything. Um, well, from your perspective, but I suspect that's always your perspective, Mr. Orthodoxy. I mean, or Orthodoxy is cool. I mean, I can't say how everybody feels about it. I can tell you, I don't think you made very good arguments, but hey, you're going to think what you're going to think. I don't think you and I agree with much. Orthodoxy is cool. Um, but if everybody in your life agrees with you, you need to find some people who don't agree with you. Um, and it does not surprise me that you think you won. Of course, you're going to think you won. By the same token, I don't think I won or lost, but I found your views pretty nonsensical. Synchronized. I actually like your name. I think it's pretty decent. I like synchronicity. I believe people can be gay or straight. It doesn't make a difference. Orthodoxy. I'd be highly questioning all of that. I am not an atheist. I'm a Freemason. To be a Freemason, you must believe in a supreme being. I believe in the rational nature of the universe as expressed through science and as expressed through geometry. And the fact that you can't let things go, orthodoxy is cool, is also a big problem. It makes me want to put you in a timeout as well. I don't, because you're following the rules of you don't talk about other people and you're not swearing or like insulting people. But many people find the first cause argument persuasive. I find the first cause argument persuasive as well, but not so persuasive that it persuades me in that direction. It's kind of like, two arguments, both of which is persuasive. Which one is more persuasive? Sometimes, but constantly jumping on can sometimes push it. Well, as above, so below. That is ultimately this idea of bringing in heavenly attributes onto earth, right? The reason, for example, the Eastern Star points downward is the idea of taking heavenly virtues and bringing them here on earth. That is one of the values of it. So, for example, the Eastern Star, it's 5 women of the Bible. Each one has a different virtue. I always forget what they are. And it points down to say these women are in heaven now, but the values they represent, charity, piety, service, we can have them here on earth as well, or try to at least demonstrate them here on earth as much as possible. We don't want to make heaven on earth. First of all, Freemasonry is not a religion. Not every Freemason believes in heaven. I don't believe in heaven. But I do believe, like, the best quote about it comes from Michael Knowles. Well, actually, it's not his quote, but it's on his Twitter feed. I'm not a big fan of him, but every now and then he says stuff I agree with. But this is one thing he quoted. As often as this life's idle show tries to charm you, transport yourself in mind to paradise. Try to be now what you will be hereafter. So you imagine yourself in paradise in the next life. Consider what you will be there, and then try to act that way here on earth as you would in the next life. Whatever virtues you will have in the next life, whatever perfections you will demonstrate, bring them here in this life. As above, so below, or as in paradise, so on earth. Yes, Freemasonry is a fraternity. It's not exclusively a fraternity, but it is a fraternity, CTG. Well, the more you know is very important. The Jacob's Ladder is an important symbol in Freemasonry across the board, but specifically in Craft Lodge, in emulation ritual in the first 3 degrees. Synchronized, I mean, metaphorically, maybe. Certainly, like, Earth is the best place I could possibly be. Everywhere else in the universe, I couldn't survive. And to be in Canada is pretty incredible when so many people are born in places without access to food, water, shelter. I got a lot of luck. I'm very lucky to have been born where I was born, to the parents I had, in the place I was. And for a lot of people, my life would be heaven. Um, Hello, Biff. Well, I mean, what I would say is whether I believe it literally or not, I certainly would try in my day-to-day life to exist in a manner that creates a better world and takes heavenly virtues and puts them here on earth. Um, it is orthodoxy is cool, especially if you're me. For some people, depending on where they're born and what they're experiencing, they might be going through a lot of challenges. His creation is still amazing, but they might have a harder time seeing it in some circumstances, right? Um, no, I've never heard Masons use the term catechism. I mean, it wouldn't shock me because you can have like a non-religious catechism, to my knowledge. Um, you know, uh, like I think you can use the term catechism in a multiple ways, but I've never heard the term catechism in my Masonic lodges. It's always you're proving. Um, I do not know much about apotheosis. I mean, I like the idea in general of just, and again, you see this in the Eastern Star with the star pointed down. I like the idea of there are certain, if you want to call them heavenly values, you can, or just values. Even if you want to go from the Platonic sense, the values, like there's the Platonic value of temperance, the Platonic value of virtue, which is the most virtuous you can be, the most temperate you can be. And you try to take those ideals, call them heavenly ideals, or call them, ideals here on earth, or sorry, call them Platonic ideals or heavenly ideals, and you try to bring them onto earth. I think that's absolutely the proper way to be. Well, Joseph, even if you're poor, the world is still incredible, and creation is still incredible, but that doesn't mean you're not struggling and suffering. Um, Catechism means teachings. I mean, I've heard the term catechism used in non-religious contexts, but never in. I've heard the term catechism described in non-religious contexts, but never in Masonic contexts. Um, yeah, but we call that proving synchronized. Like we don't call it a catechism, we have provings, right? So you prove your second, so you prove your first degree to get your second, you prove your second degree to get your third, then you prove your third degree to become a master. Um, so it's called a proving or an examination, um, at least since I've joined. And that is usually memorization of work and memorization of a degree. I do not know who those old men are. All right, I said I was going to end the stream, and now I'm still here. I'm going to end the stream because it's 3:30. Mark your calendars. August 21st, we're going to be talking about and celebrating the Masonic Medical Research Institute. 50% of any funds raised during that time will go to the Masonic Medical Research Institute out of Utica, New York, to support its efforts in both medical research and as a crown jewel within Freemasonry. All right, guys, I'll talk to you all at 1 p.m. Thank you all for being here.